Bore da ar ôl.
Okay, we're ready to start.
Iawn, bore da. Good morning. Croeso chi gyd.
Welcome you all to
Gan ei bod yn ffrydio'r cyfarfod cyhoeddus fydd yn rhaid i ni gynnal 2 gyfarfod Zoom ar wahân, un ar gyfer yr eitemau cyhoeddus, un ar gyfer yr eitem.
Sorry, Chair, can I just ask, is translation working for anybody? No.
It
doesn't seem to be.
It's working for me, Dawn, but it's really not very good.
Yeah, it's incredibly quiet to the point I can't actually understand what's being said.
Okay.
No.
Iawn, okay. Can we sort that out? Then I'll start again and I'll say it in English for now. Okay. Right. Good morning to you all and welcome to the Finance Committee. And today we're all attending remotely. As we have a live streaming the public meeting, we need to hold 2 separate meetings, one for the public items and one for the exempt item. Once members agree to go into committee, everyone will need to leave the meeting and rejoin the exempt meeting. The links are in your diary invites or in the email sent to you last Friday. All microphones will be muted unless you indicate your wish to speak, at which point I will call out your name and you will need to turn your microphone on. Can I remind members to choose their language of choice, and if you wish to speak, then that you use the raise hand function. And you can also use the chat facility to chat amongst yourselves. Right, before we proceed, I would like to say, as we all know, an important member of this committee passed away recently. So out of respect to him, I am going to ask for a 1-minute silence before we proceed, starting from now. Diolch yn fawr, thank you. May you rest in peace, Dave Cowens. Iawn, ydy'r cyfieithu, is everything sorted with the translation? Can you find out?
Can we try the translation again, please?
Iawn, so dwi am siarad yn Gymraeg. Iawn, ymddiheuriadau am absenoldeb.
Sorry, translation, it's still not working. Can we try translator 2, please?
Good morning, everybody. It's translator 2 speaking. Are you able to hear me at all?
Yes,
okay.
We are.
Brilliant, thank you. Yeah,
yes, loud and clear.
Great.
Right.
Item 1, apologies for absence.
From Councillor Peter Lewis and Councillor Andrew Wood.
Eitem
Thank you very much. Item 2, declaring interests. Anybody declaring an interest?
No.
No, nobody declaring an interest. Okay.
Item 3.
Item 3, urgent matters. I'm not aware of any urgent matters. Item 4, questions to cabinet members. I'm not aware of any questions. So go straight on then to item number 5A, the financial outturn 2019-2020. And Mr. Andrew Kirkham is going to take this item, as I understand. Andrew, over to you.
Thank you, and good morning to everybody, and happy birthday to the chairman. Catching me up. First report is the outturn for 1920, and by outturn what I mean is the statement of accounts for 1920 has been produced, and we can confirm what the actual position was, and we then relate that to the budget monitoring reports that have been coming to you throughout 1920. So what I thought I'd do is put the report on the screen, and at least everybody can see what we're talking about, and we can go through it together. I'll shout out the paragraph numbers that I'm talking about, but first, on the first page, great start, the date of the meeting for the Cabinet, I believe, is the 24th of September, not the 23rd. I think there might have been a change whilst I was writing the report, so this will go to Cabinet on Thursday. So if we go to paragraph 3, that's the report details. The first few paragraphs refer to the legal requirements of producing a statement of accounts, and ordinarily they'd be produced by before the 15th of June, and they would go to the Audit and Governance Committee for approval in mid-September. Unfortunately, due to the pandemic, there were delays in common with most authorities throughout Great Britain, as I understand it. So we put the notification in the media to say there'd be a delay, and it's going to Audit and Governance on the 30th of September. That's a statement of accounts, and I signed the statement on the 29th of July. Audit Wales is still carrying out their audit review, so we don't quite know yet what the conclusion will be, but we're hopeful that it will be an unqualified opinion. But as I say, there's the report that they will do when they're finished, going to the Audit Committee at the end of September. So the statement of accounts includes the outturn and all the required entries that we need to do, and from that we can identify what our outturn was, and that's the purpose of this report. If we move over to paragraph 3.9, so that's on the next page, I think, yeah. Essentially, and it's pleasing to note that our financial outturn was very much in line with what was reported to members during 1920, following, as you may recall, the recovery plan that we had to enact to deal with a significant underfunding, pressure, overspend, call it what you will, in social services and education. That was documented to 2 or 3 meetings to members during 1920. Appendix 1 shows the outturn position, in other words, the year-end position, and makes comparisons with the original budget and the report that came to members in, I think it was January. There was a few variations that essentially were unreported, and One related to, doesn't it seem a long time ago, the unfortunate storms back in February when there was significant storm damage and issues that cost this authority a lot of money to put right, most of which we had to stand ourselves, and some of it was in 1920. That was about £111,000. The other significant unreported figure was some borrowing that we did towards the end of the year in anticipation of the rates changing. So we secured a significant amount of borrowing at the end of March to see us through the year we're now in terms of cash flow and to fund our capital programme. There was a reduction in the council tax reduction entitlement, and essentially when you wrapped everything together, as I say, we came in as planned as a consequence of our recovery plan. Statement of accounts and the accounting entries did all the prudent and proper entries in respect of what was then anticipated liabilities that we knew about. So they were duly affected. We used capital receipts to protect our general balances, and as I say, the recovery plan actually used quite a lot of our reserves and balances to make up the shortfall that we had, that was reported in respect of our pressures in 1920. I think it's fair to say that in terms of 1920, there was very little expenditure activity in relation to the pandemic, which landed towards the middle of March. So 1920 was essentially untouched by the pandemic, but obviously the next report will show that 2021 significantly is and has been. Our total reserves are shown in Appendix 2. They're about 11 million. That includes some capital receipt reserves that are included in the balance sheet as reserves, and our general balances are in the sum of 2.366 million. So I'm on 3.16 and 3.17. Very low balances, as members know and have known for quite a long time, and I guess that begins to bite more in respect of what we're carrying forward into 2021, which, as I say, is significantly affected by the pandemic. To conclude, paragraph 3.18, the statement of accounts and the closure of the accounts had to be conducted in accordance with basically unchanged requirements. The pandemic didn't mean that we could do anything different in terms of producing a statement of accounts. It was done remotely, and it was challenging, and it was done at a time in April, May, early June, when a lot of the key staff were supporting a lot of the pandemic projects, such as the business grants, free school meals and other things. So it was quite understandable that we were unable to hit the deadlines, but as you can see, we probably lost 2 months, but we made that up, and the accounts were probably 2 or 3 weeks late, basically, which is a credit to the staff and the services that have worked together and worked with Audit Wales to produce what we're required to produce, which is a set of accounts, a true and fair view of the financial standing position of Conway for 1920. So, as I say, that concludes 1920, and I think we need to draw a line under 1920 and move on to the challenging 2021. At the same time, need to start worrying about 21-22. So the recommendations in paragraph 2 are that members accept the report reflecting the outturn position for 1920 and note our general balances and our balances overall are shown, not easy to see, but in paragraph 2.2. So that's general balances of 2.366 million and overall balances of 11 million. Oh, it's gone bigger now. No, it's not. Okay, that's better. Okay, Chair, that's me on this report.
Diolch, Andrew. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. Okay.
I can see I've got Councillor Anne McCaffrey. Anne?
Thanks very much, Chair, and thanks, Andrew. I mean, I'd like to move the recommendations 2.1, 2.2, because obviously, you know, it's a done deal now anyway, isn't it? But just a couple of sort of reflections from me, really. Whilst, you know, it's great that we've balanced for the year, it's actually quite sobering to see that we've actually used 8% of our reserves and balances to achieve that. But I think the other more sobering thought as well is that the report shows us that our schools had to use 25% of their reserves. I'm not quite sure, was that just to manage, Andrew, in terms of the cuts that were made to their budgets, or is there any other underlying reason for the fact that 25% of their reserves have gone in this financial year?
Obviously, I don't know the detail of the position of 60-odd schools in terms of what they use the balances for and why, but what I do know is that many of our schools prudently did put money aside over the past 2 or 3 years because they knew that significant pressures were coming. So if you recall, our balances for schools were amongst the highest in Wales. I think it was last year, the year before, and the year before that. And fair play to them, you know, that was because they could see there was a year coming, and that was clearly 1920, where they'd have to use balances to help with the budgetary problems that they feared were coming, that did come. So for many schools, it was a planned use of balances to help them out when times got tough, which they duly did in 1920 and continued to do so in 2021. Sorry, does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, it does. Thanks for that. I mean, obviously, I know from my own experience as chair that the last 2 or 3 years we couldn't have survived without the use of our reserves and balances, and indeed without the use of Section 106 monies just to survive. Really, I just think it's quite sobering, really, and I think it's something that we as a committee just need to bear in mind, that our schools have had to use 25% of their reserves to get through 1920. Thanks, Andrew.
Pleasure.
Diolch yn fawr, Anne.
Thanks very much, Anne.
I don't seem to have anybody else with a hand up, so ga I ofyn am eilydd.
Can I ask for a seconder to the proposal?
Sorry. Joan. Thank you, Joan. There we are. So we move on. The item 5B.
To item 5B.
Oh, sorry. Apologies. I've gone ahead of myself. We need to, right, can I have a vote, please? Sally will go through each member of this committee alphabetically.
Yep, so Councillor Phil Capper.
In favour.
Councillor Jeff Corrie. Councillor Corrie. Okay, Councillor Brian Cossey.
Yeah, in favour.
Okay. Councillor Pauline Heap-Williams.
In favour.
Councillor Andrew Hinchliffe.
In favour.
Councillor Chris Hughes.
In favour.
Councillor Ronnie Hughes.
For.
Councillor Wyn Ellis-Jones.
O blaid.
Councillor Ifod Lloyd.
Obliged.
Councillor
Favour.
James Listed.
Obliged.
In
Councillor Al
favour.
Councillor Anne McCaffrey.
In favour?
Councillor Austin Roberts.
Obliged.
Councillor Harry Saville.
For.
Councillor Nigel Smith.
Obliged.
And Councillor Joan Vaughan.
In favour.
Okay, that's carried.
I didn't get a vote then.
Councillor Ken Stevens.
Oh, Councillor Ken Stevens, apologies.
Yeah, okay, I'll go with it, okay.
So Jeff Corrie, I lost my connection. Just come back.
Yeah. Are you in favour or against, Jeff?
I'm in favour.
Okay, thank you. Diolch yn fawr chi gyd.
Thank you.
Right, we move on. Item 5.
Item 5B. Assess the budgetary position of 2020 to 2021.
Okay, thank you. So this is the assessment of the budgetary position, and again, this is going to Cabinet on the 24th of September, not the 23rd. So I'll start on paragraph 3, which is the kind of, there we go. Can everybody kind of see it? Does it need to be a little bit bigger? That's better. So we'll go through this together. I'm going to take my time, if that's all right, and I'm not going to read it to you, but I'll try and put across what was in my head when I was writing the different sections and the different paragraphs. So we start off with paragraph 3.1, and I guess I need to make it clear that this is not a traditional report that historically it's come to you in terms of budget monitoring. This is a report that's trying to make a financial assessment of 2021 set against the background of extreme uncertainty. And I think it's fair to say that every business, every person, every local authority is facing extreme uncertainty with either personal finances, business finances, or public sector finances, and Conway is no different at all. The members' reports so far have been informal and largely verbal, because even though it's uncertain today, it was far more uncertain back on the 22nd of June and the 3rd of August, when we had informal scrutiny meetings to share with you what we knew, what we didn't know, what we feared, and what we predicted. And as I say, they were informal. This is the first formal report that tries to put pen to paper to articulate what the script is. Paragraph 3.2, I guess, is a reminder in a way. We've got a budget of around about 229 million. And if you recall, again, it seemed a long time ago, the budget was set against us receiving the second worst settlement in Wales, significant resource shortfall of 11 million, and budget reductions from all services, including schools, of 8.3 million. So that's where we started back in, I think it was March. Yeah, 5th of March. Just move the thingamabob up a bit. In that report, obviously, back on the 5th of March, we were all expecting a normal year, normal times. And obviously, and sadly, it's been anything but, hasn't it? The budget report that came to you, to council, put in the risks that were known, or not even known, about back in March, and you can see them there in the bullet points. First one, the impact of coronavirus producing economic consequences. And back in that day, I think, like Ewan said a couple of meetings ago, I had to look coronavirus up to work out how to spell it, but it was there, and it's landed, and it has produced significant economic consequences. The other things: additional expenditure incurred, reduced income from fees and charges, non-delivery of planned budget reductions, higher expenditure on, well, the list goes on, doesn't it? And they were just a few of the risks that are knocking around every year. But this is the first time that those risks, every single one of them, has hit us. And obviously not just hit us, but hit everybody. And those risks there to local government has hit every single local authority in Great Britain. So come back to it, we're not alone. Paragraph 3.5, got to acknowledge the UK government and the Welsh government. There's been unprecedented financial support to the economy and local government since it landed in March, and obviously Welsh government get their grant funding through the UK government, and then it's for Welsh government to determine what they do with the consequentials that have been announced over the last 6 or 7 months, which obviously is on top of, if you like, normal grant funding. And Welsh government, as far as local government is concerned, has supported additional related pandemic expenditure, lost income as a consequence of the pandemic, and additional council tax reduction entitlement. So far, that's where the Welsh government have used the consequentials from the UK government to support local governments, and then obviously support Conway. Now, it's been on a kind of monthly release basis, really. Those three areas weren't formalised in April or May. They've kind of come about as the announcement from the UK government has been made, the money has been allocated, Welsh government have decided what to do with it, and then sitting behind those, there's been guidance on how to access, what qualifies, what doesn't qualify, etc. So it's been quite a trail over the past 6 or 7 months to get to that point. Reassuringly, and I guess luckily for Conway, the grant distribution has been on a needs basis, so it's been on a claim basis in accordance with guidance. It's not been through a formula distribution, and that was one significant concerns I had back in April, May, that if grant was forthcoming, however much it would be, the distribution of it would be key to Conway, because we've got some unique ingredients to our budget in terms of tourism, theatre, the list goes on, doesn't it, tramway, and we tend not to do as well with formula-based distribution, and thankfully the grant support has been on a needs base, as I say, backed up by grant claims, and I'll come to that later. So let's 3.8, yeah, you understand the consequentials, and you can understand, can't you, the fast-moving position. It slowed down a bit in July, August, but it's certainly revving up again now, as we all know, in terms of uncertainty and what could happen next. Put there, when I wrote the report on the 7th of September, it will continue to be fast-moving with national and local impacts caused by the pandemic, and as little as two weeks later, that's exactly what we're beginning to see, isn't it? So we've still got an extreme amount of uncertainty facing us for the next 6 or 7 months of this financial year. So paragraph 3.9 in the table, if we look at the table, see, that's what we've claimed so far. Do you remember at the top when it said Welsh Government have identified support for this, that and the other? Well, those are our claims, additional expenditure for Q1, that's April, May, June. Then additional expenditure for July have been claimed and largely sorted out. So we claimed 2.4 million for Q1 and we were refunded 2.193 million. And you can see the position for July, and you can see the lost income, claimed 3.8, got back 3.8. The lost income for what they call tranche 2 was submitted for Q1 recently. Welsh Government is still reviewing it, so we don't know how much of that 857 we'll get back. And Welsh Government, a couple of weeks ago, I think it was, announced some support for the first few months of council tax reduction. That's where households are entitled to get support for their council tax, which therefore costs us money. And Welsh Government have provided grant to support the first couple of months of additional council tax reduction. Our August claim for additional expenditure isn't on there because at the time of writing we were in the process of making that claim. Anyway, it was sent to Welsh Government on I think it was the 15th or the 16th of September for the month of August. So each basically claim is a month behind where we are. So September's went in 15th of September for the expenditure in August, and that claim was for 1.237 million. So far we've claimed around about £10 million, and obviously Welsh Government is still going through all the claims from all the authorities for the September claim for August. So we don't know what will be supported. The Welsh Government have set up a team of officials, and I think there's an ex-treasurer, that go through each and every claim dutifully each and every month, and they look at what's been claimed and they assess it for consistency, reasonableness, evidence, and they either accept it, that's each individual element, accept it, reject it, ask for further information, and then from that further information they either accept it, reject it, or they have been sometimes paying 50% of the claim. So it's quite an intense process, as paragraph 3.11 shows. There you go. There's been superb joint working between our services and the service accountants, because we basically had to put a lot of time and effort into ensuring that we claim what we're entitled to. So we have to capture the expenditure, we have to verify it, we have to have supporting information, and that's quite capacity hungry for us. And I guess one of the reasons that we haven't been able to produce traditional reports and do traditional things is because a lot of our key staff have been making sure that at least we can try and claim what we think we're entitled to, that therefore will help our overspend, rather than mulling about with budget monitoring reports, which would take us away from what I see as the most important thing, which is to try and secure the money that we need. So as I say, just need to dismiss a message here. This is going to be a hoot. Oh, done it. So as I say, capacity hungry, but very, very important. And hats off to services and the accountancy staff for what they've done in, as I say, managing to submit justifiable claims with appropriate evidence in the sum of £10 million so far. And as I say, that's probably going to continue for the rest of the financial year, as I see it. The claims, certainly on the expenditure side, have largely been for social services, free school meals and homelessness. So the recent claim of 1.2 million, 724,000 of that was for and in respect of social services, 236,000 free school meals and 104,000 homelessness, and 153 for everything else. So you can see, can't you, where the additional pressures are for a local authority, and the guidance which says what we can claim and what we can't claim is very specific, certainly in terms of social services. So that's been the expenditure, that's been the balance. There's a plane going across. Move on to where are we now? We'll move on to paragraph, well, the next page, just above 3.13. We have had disallowed claims. The majority of it has been for IT support, where the Welsh Government from the early months determined that only 50% of IT additional expenditure will be supported through this grant. So we have incurred quite a lot, a couple of 100,000, and we haven't got every penny back, same as every other authority. Lost income, as I say, that was reassuring that the first quarter was successfully claimed and paid, and the first quarter for tranche 1, as they call it, was for the tramway, waste collection, recycling, leisure services and the venue. So we've claimed and been refunded everything that we could prove that we'd lost in terms of income in respect to the first quarter for most of our significant service areas. It's also fair to say in paragraph 3.5, and this applies to expenditure and income, that Welsh Government from the outset has said that operational savings would be offset against grant claims. So they have asked us to declare operational savings and things such as staff travel, utility costs, to reduce the claim that we make, which I suppose is fair enough in a way. What they've also said is that authorities who've claimed furlough grant, again, should offset the furlough grant received from the UK government against the income loss claims. And we furloughed around about 300 staff, and so far, April to July, we've claimed around about 893,000 from the UK government in respect of the furlough arrangements. So essentially that goes to Welsh Government to support them, to support us and everybody else. So you can see from the expenditure and income that we will face an overspend in respect of the fact that not everything that we incur or lose is necessarily going to be recovered. And 3.16 identifies the first element of the overspends that appear a bit later in respect of that. And that's 180 is definite, and the table further on, which we won't go to yet, picks up on the fact that that will probably continue for the rest of the year. So each month, each quarter, there will be lost income, additional expenditure that's not supported by the Welsh Government, but I come back to the vast majority is supported. Appendix 1 sets out the budget reductions, and if you remember the risks back up at the top, back in March who was worrying about the fact that significant budget reductions, not everything may be delivered. Historically, we've been successful in delivering planned budget reductions, but in the year we're now in, some of the plans have gone skew-whiff because of the pandemic, and services are saying that some of the things that they could have done, would have done, planned to do, are not now as deliverable. And at this point in time, they will be further reviewed, but I'm flagging up the fact that there's a potential non-delivery of 1.5 million, which in budgetary speak is a pressure stroke overspend to us. And appendix 1 shows the budget reduction, shows the feeling of the services, but as I say, that will be further reviewed, so hopefully that 1.5 may come down, but I'm not guaranteeing that it will do, or the services aren't guaranteeing that it will do. Paragraph 3.18 refers to council tax reduction. As I say, the first couple of months additional reduction support was just over 100,000. By the end of the year, I think it could be around about 1 million. Welsh Government have said that they're hopeful to support such additional expenditure as households face bills that they're not able to pay and are eligible for support. So I'm hoping that the Welsh Government can cover that complete cost completely for the year, whatever that estimate of £1 million may be. So in the table down there, there's no figure included as an overspend for the year in respect of council tax reduction, on the basis that Welsh Government continue to support that which is entitled to be awarded, and, if you like, forms part of our expenditure. Paragraph 3.9. Now, this isn't pandemic related specifically, but again, colliding with the pandemic, the nationally agreed, not agreed by Conway, nationally agreed pay awards for teachers and other staff have been at a level higher than we budgeted for. Now, need to just put that into some kind of perspective. We are not alone. Authorities up and down the country probably won't have budgeted for the pay awards at those levels. So therefore, I would say most authorities will be looking at an equivalent paragraph 3.19 that we've got. That's pretty recent, and again, back in when we had the briefings in June and August, they weren't known. So they've come along fairly recently. We've tried our best to size what that means in terms of estimating what those percentages will be compared with what we'd included, and the difference we think at the moment is around 900,000, 300,000 for schools and 600,000 for, if you like, non-schools, other services. Could be more, could be less, but that's the estimate at this point in time. Paragraph 3.20 picks up that it's not known, how many times I'm going to say that, whether additional funding in full or in part will come to help us with those nationally agreed pay pressures. If they do, great. If they don't, then we're facing an overspend of just under £1 million. Paragraph 3.21, and yeah, this is all about council tax. So we set the council tax, sent out the bills, got to stress that it's still payable. Many people are able to and continue to pay the council tax. Many people have made arrangements but there's not been a council tax holiday supported by the UK government or the Welsh government. So with the extent to which people are unable to pay, we're building up arrears. That will continue probably for the full financial year. And at the end of the financial year, there'll be arrears, and we'll have to make provision in the accounts and accounting entry should that not be collectible in the fullness of time. And our council tax collection requirement is 65 million and 17 million. So that's 82 million pounds. So even a small reduction in council tax collection, a small percentage, and that's what's being experienced throughout the United Kingdom, multiply a small percentage by a big number and you end up with a big number. So we'll have to wait and see. At this point in time, the Welsh Government are aware of this issue and challenge, but at this point in time, there's been no definitive support identified or flexibility available in respect of council tax income. So we'll have to wait and see what that does to Conway, but that will be something that probably will feature in our year-end position outturn. And again, a figure is not the 1.5 million, but a figure just below that is included in the worry table of our financially assessed overspend at this point in time. If we keep going further, 3 point, where are we now? Go on. So there you go. It's not known whether it's put it. Now 3.25, because we've been concentrating so much on additional expenditure, lost income, sending returns in, completing the accounts, blah, 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 and services have been supporting the communities. The traditional budget monitoring hasn't been done to the extent that it has been in previous years. And therefore, at this point in time, I'm hoping that there's no further unknowns in terms of service overspends that are non-pandemic related. But that's a risk that we need to explore next. So table 2 tries to put all that together in a table with figures and words that Sam loves, and at the bottom pops out an estimated assessed pressure stroke overspend of just over £4 million for Conway. And you can see there the likelihood, the pressure, the amount, and where we're up to in terms of the comments. And that table is what I've been wittering about for the past 20 minutes, whatever it is. Could be more, could be less. Significant uncertainty. We don't know what the next 6 months will bring, both in terms of pandemic issues, which translate into financial issues, and we don't know what the UK government may be able to do about it. Both governments have said basically there's not enough money to go around. Everybody's doing the best, but we'll have to wait and see the extent to which that stays as it is, gets better or gets worse. That's to tell us what paragraph 3.27 is going on about. But it's obvious, isn't it, that we need to develop some kind of recovery plan, because that 4.3 million, in my mind, isn't going to go to zero. So we need to face facts. We're going to have a financial overspend, and we need to start doing something about it. We can have scenarios coming out of our ears about this, that, and the other, but I always think it's best to aim at something, best worst case scenario, whatever you want to call it. So I think we need to start planning for a figure such as the 4.3 million above, in the full knowledge that It could be more, it could be less. How do we do that? Well, I think we have to start looking at our reserves and balances. Those authorities with healthy reserves and balances, that's where they're heading. There's quite a lot of authorities that haven't got reserves and balances to the extent that will be needed, and that includes us. We need to look at the budget reductions again, spending controls to a degree, and I think we need to look at creativity again, the way in which we can turn resources to support the revenue budget that may be currently supporting the capital budget. We've done it before. I think we need to try and do it again. Our problem is that our capital receipts, which has come to our rescue historically, we haven't got significant capital receipts lurking around. But as I say, I think we need to put those things in train: reserves, capital receipts, some form of spending, detailed control, review. The last thing I think most authorities want to see is service cuts at a time like this. How do you cut budgets to social services in times like these? It's counterintuitive, isn't it? So the paragraph 3.9 picks up something that we didn't think would happen to this extent back in March. Should any service be in a position to report an overspend, then a report be presented to council outlining the reason for the overspend along with the recovery plan. That's the resolution. Very good resolution back in March in normal times, but perhaps not something that we can do very well at this point in time. I seem to have frozen with my picture. Can you still hear me? Yeah? Right, I'll carry on.
Yeah, yes, we can still hear you, Andrew.
Oh, that's not a good way to be frozen, that is it? Right, I better quicken up, haven't I? Paragraph 3.32. Far worse position was feared, certainly when we were doing the briefings. UK government and Welsh government have released further monies. That's helped. I think we also need to come to terms with, we're going to grapple with 2021 right till the end of the year, but at the same time we've got to start thinking about 21-22. Well, WLGA, Welsh Local Government Association, have just sent out I think, try and capture anticipated pressures in Wales to act as some kind of lobbying document. We don't know what the UK autumn budget will say, and I suspect the Chancellor's probably changing it week by week, as I do with my thinking. But clearly that will send a significant signal about what the Welsh Government will get, and then what will be afforded to local government for 21-22 and to Conway. So we haven't got a clue about that. Welsh Government intend to carry on as virtual normal with provisional budget, draft budget in early December and the final budget at the end of March. I think there'll be a lot of twists and turns between now and then, to be honest. And you come back to, in times like these, we've got to do what we can, do our best. We've got experienced staff who care about services and people, staff who understand their services and their budgets, and we've been up and running, working in unusual times from March, so we're pretty well placed to carry on to the best of our ability with people working from home, etc., as fairly normal. So we're not completely on the back foot in terms of responding, but it will be very difficult, and I suppose my plea to everybody is that we try and work together Councillor Cowns was the one that popularised Team Conway, and I think that if ever we need to regroup and reform with working together, it's now, to be honest, because it's going to be challenging, tough, difficult, but I will do my best, and I'm sure every single member of staff will do their best, but we've really got to pull together. Am I still, yeah, I'm still frozen. Right, I've finished.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much.
And can I ask you to convey our thanks to your staff as well for all the amount of work that's gone into these reports. Diolch yn fawr. Right.
Okay.
Councillor McCaffrey's got her hand up. Anne?
Thanks, Gostin. And thanks, Andrew. Some thoughts and some questions really from me. But before I do that, first of all, I'm happy to propose recommendations 1 and 2. I'm a bit concerned about recommendation 3, but I'll sort of come back to that. But I would start by saying I don't underestimate the complexity of this. And I think obviously Andrew's presentation has clarified the seriousness of our situation and how difficult it is, and how exhausting probably is as well. So I thank him and his team for this first budget report, albeit when half the year was already gone. And he knows, as do you all, that I would prefer to be involved earlier. So, you know, if I think I'm hearing that there's an opportunity for us to be more on the front foot as a complete team of scrutiny, I'm certainly up for that. Thoughts then, I mean, I'm not sure that we've got enough information to provide the strategic steer that Andrew's looking for on the recovery plan principles as requested in 2.3 of the report. I do congratulate the whole team that actually they've got their planned savings down to within 1.5 million, and I think that needs to be recognised because we are only half the way through the year, so that's not an unsubstantial feat without a doubt. But I think key data, and Andrew himself has mentioned this, just isn't available really. We've got the detailed of the savings to date, but what we don't have is, well, how does that overlay with service spend, underspend, savings, income lost, certainly not income gained. So it's very, very difficult when all we've got is headline figures, to be frank. I mean, one of the concerns that I've got is venue cum rate, for example. I don't know where we are. It brings in normally from recollection about 1.3 million. I don't know where we're going to scrutinise some of the detail of these services and some of the key sort of issues. You know, is Betsy going to be completely covering all of our costs, including all lost income and conversion costs this year and next year? Don't really know. I am concerned about reserves and balances. Obviously, we've started off with 11 million. I don't know how much we've got already. So coming to the questions, I mean, I would ask whether it's Sam, whether it's Andrew, have we to date dipped into those reserves and balances of 11 million, or are they still intact? There's a number of portfolio holders here. Given the fact that we've only got high-level data, I don't know if any of them if they want a steer about how we should handle a recovery plan. I don't know what their steer would be because we don't have the sort of detailed information. Because the big question that's outstanding for me is, how does the planned savings detail that's been shared today correlate with spend, overspend, loss of income? And that's the sort of data that I would expect the Welsh Audit Office would be asking us to consider to make an informed decision about a recovery plan. It may well be, when it comes to 2.3, we actually have to ask Andrew and the Cabinet to come back to us with their proposals, because they're in possession of the detail that we don't have. It's probably where I am. So move 1 and 2, without a doubt, recommendations, and concerned about recommendation 3 and some questions to answer.
Iawn, diolch Anne. Right, Sam, would you like to come in and answer some of Anne's queries?
Yeah, thanks, Chairman. And while the public live streaming is on the go, I wish you a happy birthday again, because last time you were there before the public were able to see that. So, congratulations.
Get on with it, Sam.
I am, thanks, Chair. So I think that the broader point which Anne is looking to question is this issue around uncertainty. And I think I would wholeheartedly agree there is a significant amount of uncertainty. If somebody here could predict what's going to happen over the next month, let alone the next 6 months, I'd be massively impressed. So I think what we've got in front of us today is a fair reflection of the position we're in at the moment. I think what's interesting in the report is that the certainty we do have in terms of the money we've recovered from Welsh Government only really covers that first quarter. So there's, that's April, May and June. We've got July, August, September, which we're nearly getting to come to the end of the second quarter now. And there's going to be hopefully some certainty following the end of this month. So I think one of the things that we have to keep pushing Welsh Government on is a faster turnaround in terms of providing the finances that they have available to them. You'll see in my comments I refer to the fact that they have around £500 million, £500 million, if not more, following last week's social services funding from UK government, which they are able to distribute that £500 million to local authorities to shore up any financial pressures. And the longer they are delaying that certainty coming through to us, the more likely reports which don't have exact predictions of the future, more likely those sort of reports will come through to us here. And I take Councillor Anne's point in regard to, going away and coming back with some firmer information and with some firmer proposals. And I guess that's what recommendation 2.3, if we look at paragraph 3.28, is seeking really, which is that we explore and develop the ways by which financial resources may be generated or diverted. We consider spending controls, and we consider a freeze on reserves held that are not yet being committed. So I think I know Councillor Anne's reluctant to want to move forward with this, but the only way we can move forward is by doing that work as outlined in paragraph 3.28. Thanks, Joe.
Thank you, Sam. Do you want to come back?
Yeah,
quickly,
I could.
Anne?
I would. Thanks very much, Austin, for that, and thanks, Sam. I don't think this is about just uncertainties, Sam. Uncertainties are certainly part of it, and none of us are soothsayers and can foresee the future. But I would assume our accountancy team, our finance team and yourself will actually have concrete information about where we are, if not for Q2, which I really accept because we're still coming towards the end of it, but certainly Q1. And that's about me, because how do you know how to apply spending controls when you actually don't know, well, how is ERF actually doing? Because they're having some income, they're not having other income, they've got to finance Mochtra, we don't know what their actually run rate is. But I'd like to deal in facts and make decisions on facts, and that's just the plea that I'm making. So it may well be, if the facts are not being made available to us, that we just actually ask the Cabinet, who obviously are privy to those facts, at service level, to come back with those spending control ideas, because guessing doesn't feel right in the middle of a pandemic when we're looking at the services that we've got to make decisions about.
Thank you, Anne. I'll let Sam come back, and then after Sam, I've got Harry and Cynghorydd Wyn Jones. Okay, Sam. Thank
you, Mr. Chairman. So in reference to Q1 and the certainty that Councillor Anne is after, it is outlined in Table 1. We are certain of that additional expenditure which took place in Q1, which is £2.45 million. We're certain of the lost income in Q1, and we are certain of the council tax reduction pressures in Q1 as well. So I don't recognise the assertion that that level of information isn't being shared, because it's clearly outlined there in Table 1. And the uncertainty I was referring to was the level of funding which will be supported by Welsh Government over the most recent months and in the months ahead of us. And that's where some of the difficulty in predicting the end position currently lies. But there's very much certainty there as to additional expenditure, loss of income, and some of the council tax reduction measures that took place in Q1. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, diolch. Right, Councillor Harry.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I can't help but feel that obviously this is an unprecedented situation. I think we need to start making progress sooner rather than later. You know, as we've said, the facts aren't concrete at this point in time, and we don't know exactly what the final position will be. But I feel we need to start making progress. So I don't know, am I able to propose an amendment to Anne's proposal at this stage, as it hasn't been seconded?
Yes.
Okay, right. Well, in that case, I would like to propose that we include recommendation 3, and also that, and I'll invite Andrew to comment on this, but that we ask for a recovery plan, if possible, at the very least an update, to come to this committee on the 2nd of November, so we can start planning and we can start making headway on this. Because what we wouldn't want is to get towards the end of the financial year and find out the problem hasn't been contained. So that's the amendment I'd like to propose, that we include recommendation 3, and that we ask for an update, ideally a recovery plan, to come to this committee and then make its way through the democratic process from the 2nd of November.
Thank you. Andrew, do you want to make a comment?
Yeah, I accept the frustration that there is. I think that outside we've got significant capacity issues in terms of what people are dealing with, which is why I guess the report and my approach has been more of a strategic approach rather than a forensic detailed approach. We very simply haven't got the staff, the resources, the time and the certainty to do that. And it is most unfortunate. I suppose you come back to the issues of, is it 4 million? Well, if it is 4 million, the certainty we've got is that there's 900K's worth of pay awards. They're splattered throughout each and every service, including schools. And to me, we need to get the high level figures as right as possible. The forensic detail for each and every budget is so hard because the budgets have been basically thrown up in the air, because the line by line analysis of, you take the venue, which you referred to. Now, to know where we are with the venue, what you do know is that you've got a budget that covered pay, NNDR, repair and maintenance, utilities, and then you've got income. And most of those lines are completely in real time different to how they were set, because the income's dried up, the pay's carried on, the NNDR has stayed the same. You referred to what savings have we got? Well, we're trying to identify the savings we may have across the piece, because we have to include them as a reduction to our grant claims from Welsh Government. So some of our traditional savings that we'd be reporting to you on a line by line basis, it's pointless, because all the travel that we're saving over each and every service, about 40,000 a month, is being netted down against the grant claims for our expenditure, for our income grant claims. So it's a complete and utter new world for us to deal with in terms of accounting, forecasting, reporting and budgeting. And my advice to you is that the more forensic that you get and you require, the less strategic knowledge you'll end up with, because we'll be spending so much time chasing things around the houses that we'll actually miss the big picture, which is the fact that well, the tables show, basically. We've got to deal with the big picture and not get too hung up on the detail, unfortunately. And, you know, for me to say that, technically it's not right, but I come back to the times we're in, we're having to cope with things in a different way to try and manage what we need to do. We haven't got the capacity at the time to be as forensic as you'd like, I'd like, and potentially what's needed. So let's have a plan B, which is taking a strategic look at, these are the pressures at a high level, what can we do about it? And the first thing I'm going to do, I mean, you asked about what reserves have been committed thus far out of the 11 million. The answer is some of them. What the team now need to do is to go through those and see what are uncommitted, because in the budget for the year we're now in, there was the use of departmental reserves, not a significant amount, but we need to establish at a high level that we need to establish the budget reductions. Again, we need to look at our capital resources to see what we can do to introduce an amount of money for the whole of the budget. To get hung up in individual services within services, I don't think we'll solve what needs to be solved, to be honest. And that's my experience that I'm offering to you.
Thank you, Andrew. Harry, do you want to come back?
Yeah, if I may, Chair, just to provide some clarity, what I'm proposing is a strategic overview. You know, I mean, we're not going to have these figures, certainly not in the near future, and they'll probably change a lot between now and the end of the year. But I think it's important that the thinking process begins now, sooner rather than later. I mean, you know, as Anna said, you know, Cabinet will be, and officers are the ones that will be privy to the fine detail. I think what I'd like to see is just that ideally by November, we can have an update to say, well, look, this is the progress that's been made on a strategic level to dealing with the problem that we're facing.
Are you willing for that to happen, Andrew? An update?
Absolutely. That's he's put it better than I was able to do. But yeah, we've got to remain strategic, and that's what I'll be doing. My team will be doing. Once we've got the accounts sorted out, it releases a bit of capacity to do things like that.
Okay.
So yeah.
Okay, fine. Right. Next, I've got Cynghorwyr Wyn Jones, then Chris Hughes, Gareth Jones, and Brian Cossey.
Diolch, Cadeirydd.
Thank you, Chair. Can I, first of all, thanks Andrew for this report. This is the first formal report we've had, but of course, we thank Andrew for the updates informally he's given over the past few weeks and months. And we accept how difficult it is for the service to foresee what's going to happen. I have no problem with the third option. It is important we do consider all the options which reserves and which money will allow them to spend. And what we can't do today is decide is which ones we're going to freeze, but I agree we need to consider all options. But also take for granted, Andrew agreed that there would be a monthly update to this committee in any case, so that we were informed about what was going on as regularly as possible. I've got a question for the leader. What's the situation of the Budget Working Group? Because if the only time over the past few years we've needed this group, this is when we need the contribution across the board, and as members we also need to know what's been going on, and the Budget Working Group was quite an effective way of doing so, that we receive information regularly and as often as required.
Yeah, diolch, Chairman. Thanks, Wyn, as well. Yeah, we can look at getting those reinstated, but perhaps we need to reconsider some of the remit of it because of the circumstances and the times that we're in. So yeah, I'll certainly take that one away, and perhaps if I come back to you for the scrutiny meeting at the start of October with a position. Thanks.
Yeah, ti'n hapus am hynna, Wyn?
Are you happy with that, Wyn? Yeah, as soon as possible, really. We don't have time to delay on this, although we won't get the final solution for it at some time. We need to try and start tackling the problem as soon as we can. Okay, thank you. Chris?
Thanks, Chair. In 3.7, Andrew says very clearly that the current arrangements where grants are being arranged on a needs basis paid through grant claims in accordance with the grant guidance rather than through a formula distribution. This arrangement, Andrew says, has better recognised the specific pressures faced by Conway. The leader seems to disagree with that, suggesting that all of the money should be allocated through formula immediately. My understanding of the £500 million that the Welsh Government have is that it is their fund for all organisations, not just local government, but for health, for anything that's needed by other emergency services that are funded through Wales and from the Natural Resources Wales. So I think it would be rather, I'm sure the leader will correct me if I'm wrong, but certainly correspondence and discussions that I've had with others indicate that that is the case. So it would be rather imprudent of any government to spend all of that money in one go and then not have the money if other services or other organisations such as health desperately needed that money or some of that money to expand the service if there is a second wave of COVID, as seems likely. And certainly the officers seem to be suggesting that the current process used by Welsh Government is the appropriate use for allocation of those resources. So I welcome that.
Okay.
I'm happy to second the recommendation, but I do share some of the concerns of Anne in terms of the fact that we do need more information. You know, even making strategic decisions are difficult without information. I know that we have this the recovery board, and I'm not sure if the recovery board is about all of the recovery elements, including Conway's or outside, or just the commercial and economic process. But if it is, and that board is that board, certain political parties are excluded from that, so we don't have that information as to the whole picture. So it does concern me that we were asked to make some strategic directions when I don't think we have all the information, although I understand what the points Councillor Wyn's made, and I understand the points Andrew's made. We do have to move forward. We do have to start making decisions, but I think we do also need more information to allow us to do that. And I'm not talking about getting into the minutiae. I'm not talking about getting into the detail that Andrew mentioned before, but I think to be able to make decisions from a strategic overview, we do need to understand a little bit more about each department and the impact that COVID is specifically having on them.
Right. Are you seconding Anne's proposal, or are you seconding Harry's proposal?
I'm prepared to second Harry's proposal because I do think we need to move forward on that.
That's fine. So I'll just bring in Sam to answer some of your concerns.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Chris. So I just want to clarify then the point I was making. Perhaps I didn't make it clearly enough. My issue has been not at all with the way in which the money is distributed, and been very welcome that money has been distributed on a needs basis. I think the frustration is not knowing. So if you look at table 1, for example, the lost income in Q1 is still pending review from Welsh Government. So that's getting close to £1 million difference there, which we still don't know from April, May and June. So I think that's my frustration. And I ask that we keep pushing Welsh Government on is for us to be able to plan, prepare and deliver services properly, we need to kind of close off items that are getting quite historical now. So that's the point I was trying to make there. In terms of the amounts of money, the £500 million I referred to is definitely for local authority related services. Obviously a big chunk of that would be schools, a big chunk of that is in social care as well. I mean, back in May, Welsh Government had received about £3 billion altogether to support, yes, businesses, but also, as you indicated, significant amount of support for the health service as well. So yes, the £500 million I was referring to is certainly for supporting to services that local authorities provide. I'll tell you what I'll do, Mr. Chairman. I will share the table which reflects that with members after this meeting. Thanks.
Thank you, Sam. Right, do you want to come back quickly, Chris? And I stress quickly.
Yeah, I just thank Sam for the clarity, because certainly my understanding was that was slightly different to his, and I will be seeking responses from those that told me otherwise. But certainly, I think we would all agree that the money needs to come out quicker, but it needs to be appropriate. And I guess it's the same as us. We're constantly, as an authority, an organisation, monitoring other, when we give grants to others, we're looking at how much they spent. It has to be appropriate, doesn't it? So I guess they're doing the same thing.
Thank you, Chris. Brian Cossey.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not going to wish you a happy birthday. Yeah, I'm not quite sure where we are, so I thought I'd start off by seconding Councillor Anne with regard to recommendations 1 and 2.
Right.
Which I don't think you've had, and I think
Councillor
Chris has seconded Councillor
Harry. Yes, that's right. Yes.
I'd like to make another recommendation, which is the one in effect which is in 3.28, that we make a suggestion to Cabinet that they at least there is a freeze on the reserves held unless they've been committed, which is part of our report. I fail to understand the details on the pay awards that have been made. I mean, this happens year on year that governments either in Westminster or Cardiff give people pay rises and then don't give us the money in order to implement those pay rises in full. We have to then take the money from elsewhere, which just seems, crazy sort of financial arrangements. So I think we could at least, as a WLGA, as a member of the WLGA, write to Welsh Government and ask them to fully fund the pay rises that have been given to teachers and to other staff, which at least would reduce our potential overspend here. And I also agree with Councillor Sam that the decision making on the refunds that are due to us, I mean, that needs to be speeded up so we can have some guarantee as to exactly what our current financial position is. We're looking, to us, a £4 million. I've never known us have an overspend in a year, of such magnitude as we've got now. And we need clarity from Welsh Government, and we need it as soon as possible as to how much money is coming back to us. It's all very well them having a pretty little committee, to look at this, but we're dealing with people here, and we need the money to be able to provide people with the services that that they need. I mean, this is needs, not wants. I mean, this is an amazing world that we're living in at the minute. And we need that confidence that we're going to have the finance to be able to get through this.
Diolch, Brian. Thank you. Right. I've got Councillor Gareth Jones and then Councillor Harry Saville, and then I'm going to be taking it to the vote. Okay? Gareth.
Well, diolch yn fawr iawn,
Well,
Cadeirydd.
thank you very much, Chair.
But I've been really listening with great interest in terms of, the current situation. And I certainly want to thank Andrew for his presentation on behalf of his staff, for all the good work that they've been doing. He's explained to me as an elected member, there was prioritization. The staff and his resources, they had to look at grants and all the rest of it in terms of allocation and delivery. So scrutiny became, a second priority. But at least now we have had insight into our current situation, regardless of the frustrations and the uncertainties that members this morning have referred to. I don't wish to comment further on that, but if I may say this, why don't we take a look at the bigger picture here? You mentioned Team Conwy and working together, Andrew. This is more than Team Conwy, isn't it? This is about Team Wales, it's about Team UK for that matter. And I would ask, at this stage, in a normal year, we would be looking to presenting a balanced budget. I've been listening carefully this morning. There's no way you can be expected with this situation to bring up and present a balanced budget by whatever, end of February, the 1st of March and so on. Does the Wales audit, do they understand that we're in a pandemic? Are they prepared to relax their regulations? Because we know the threat. If we as elected members don't deliver on a budget, then things will happen to us. Isn't there scope here for the WLGA, for all authorities to look at the current financial requirements? Because you mentioned in the first report how you had to present the balanced, as it were, finance, and that's been done for last year. But surely in this pandemic, and members have been referring to unprecedented, new world and all the rest of it, and we're expected to conform to things as if they were normal. I would ask the leader to contemplate upon that particular point and see whether there can be some kind of relaxation of financial regulations in what is obviously unprecedented and unknown as far as we can see. Diolch, Cadeirydd. Diolch am adael i siarad.
Iawn. Sam, quickly, do you want to come in?
Yeah, thanks. I've lost you, Chairman. There you are. Thanks, Mr. Chairman, and thanks, Gareth. Yeah, the Audit Wales, I think they've recognised, to be fair, that we are living in very different times. Not all regulators have done that, but to be fair to Audit Wales, they have. In terms of the financial controls and regulations, I know a number of people have been pushing for things like borrowing to be considered and how that is managed. But I think in the first instance, we're looking to Welsh Government to distribute funds. But I think it's a point well made, Gareth, and I think we should keep pushing Audit Wales and other regulators to consider how they are viewing local authorities at the moment. We are at the sharp end of all this, and as Andrew has mentioned a couple of times, our officers are dealing on a day-to-day basis with an ever-changing picture, and sometimes changing from one day to the next. The old way of doing things just cannot happen. With every will in the world, it just cannot happen because things are moving so quickly, and the pressures are so significant. Thanks, Joe.
Iawn, diolch yn fawr, Sam.
Thanks, Sam. I take you don't want to come back, Gareth?
thank you for that opportunity. Just to say thank you for that opportunity, and to thank Sam for his response as well. Diolch yn fawr iawn.
Diolch fawr, Gareth.
Thank you very much, Gareth.
We've got Harry Saville, and I did say that after Harry Saville, we're going to the vote, but I can see that either people's internet connection isn't very good or they're not listening. So we've got Harry Saville, then Ivor Lloyd, Anne McCaffrey, and then Gronwy, and then we're going to the vote, and this discussion is closed. Okay, thank you. Harry.
Yeah, once again, thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to pick up on something Brian said and just clarify something I made in respect to my proposal. Part of what I proposed was that we go recommendation 3.2. That obviously makes reference to all the options included in paragraph 3.28. And one of the reasons I've tried to avoid being prescriptive in my proposals, I think, given the nature of this crisis, what we need to do is we need to see officers and cabinet being empowered to be as creative as possible in making headway with this. So just to provide some clarity, the options in paragraph 3.28, which Brian mentioned, I'd consider those to be part of my proposal. I hope that they would be taken into consideration by cabinet and officers.
Okay, thank you, Harry. Sam, are you happy to do that? And Brian's just put his thumbs up, so he's happy. Are you happy, Sam?
I'm not sure it's my decision at this point.
Oh, right, okay. Well, no. What he meant was if he did mention that if cabinet was happy or something. Anyway, right, Ivor Glyn.
Members happy, Mr. Chair? I've got an accumulation of questions, really. One, starting with the provision for bad debt. That's only going to grow into probably an accrual into next year's account as well. And also the pay award as well, which is something that we shouldn't be picking up the tab for again, but we are, and left to deal with it. But the elephant in the room for me, having to see this in my own area, is we are seeing climate change affecting all our communities, especially in the western part of the country. We are, under the Civil Contingency Act, we are a first responder. And I would like to see like a contingency fund for that. So if the money is in Cardiff, then let's see it. I don't think 4.3 million is going to be, well, I think it's going to be a baseline, basically. We need to be able to, if we do have these mini disasters, and there's 27 community flood plans in our area, we need to be able to deal with stuff. So we've got not just the pandemic to be dealing with, but we've got other factors. We've got climate factors. I know we spent £111,000 out of our own pocket, and I have a question for Andrew, actually. We are getting reimbursed for that 111,000 and other monies as well. Is that going into the main budget, or are we ring fencing that for just repairing the damage, Andrew, please?
The turning the clock back to the flooding, etc. We incurred £400,000 worth-ish, I think, of revenue expenditure as a consequence of the flood, and the emergency finance arrangements from Welsh Government mean that authorities have to stand the first X% or amount of money of any flood-related issue and incident, which therefore meant that virtually the full expenditure that we incurred, we had to stand it ourselves because it was below the threshold of revenue grant support. So that 111,000 we spent in respect to the flood, and we stand it. And there's some further expenditure in the year we're now in that will feature in 2021 in respect of that. Having said that, the Welsh Government have provided capital funding to allow authorities to do preventative work in respect of flood-related issues. And I think Greg is aware our grant was something like 1.7 million, I think, off the top of my head, but one of the highest in Wales. So we suffered on the revenue, but we've gained on the capital. So that's the position. So no, that 111 is what we spent. Doesn't go anywhere. It's been spent as a response. Is that okay?
Answer the question. Yeah, thank you, Andrew. Yeah.
Iawn, Ifor, di darfod?
Finished.
Yep, okay. Right. Councillor Anne McCaffrey, quickly, please.
Thanks, just a quickie. I wholeheartedly agree with Brian's proposals to amend Councillor Harry's proposal. I don't disagree with Councillor Harry's proposal because I think in actual fact we're saying the same thing. My only request to him is he consider bringing forward the report back to Finance and Resources because it's 6 weeks away and there are further 2 meetings in October. I think a recovery plan a few weeks before Christmas is too late for us, really, is my view.
Okay, thank you, Anne. Harry, are you happy with that?
Well,
quickly.
I suppose my thoughts on that are that Andrew has made clear that there are pressures on staff time. I thought 6 weeks would be a reasonable time frame for that to come back in. I suppose, I mean, I'm flexible with the date, but I just think it'd be useful to give the officers time to deliver that work and get it back to us sooner rather than later. I mean, I suppose one of the problems with bringing it back as soon as possible is, I mean, obviously the figures will change between now and then. You know, in an ideal world, we would leave it as late as possible, wouldn't we? But it's a case of finding a balance between letting the figures develop and then being able to take the appropriate action before the year end. I'm happy with the date that I've put in my proposal. I mean, I've tried to be flexible in saying recovery plan ideally, but if that's not possible, an update. But I suppose if the rest of the committee have any big problems with that suggestion, if they want to make them known now, then I'm happy to listen to that.
Okay, fine. Councillor Brian Cossey was nodding his head. Brian, quickly. Unmute, Brian.
It's only that by the 2nd of November we might have the results of the payments that are going to come to us for the second quarter. So by the 2nd of November, you know, we might have a clearer picture.
Yeah. Okay. Fine. Right. Councillor Gronwy Edwards.
Yeah, Austin, thank you for letting me speak. I'm not on the committee. Basically, Brian has said what I wanted to say. It's by endorsing the fact that the pay increases should be matched by funding from Welsh Government and national government. This is ridiculous that we have to pick up that burden. So that needs to be chased up, and we do need to chase up the Welsh Government for a much quicker turnaround in our claims, because certainly sitting on the money gives us that degree of uncertainty that we cannot afford at these times. If we want to plan, we need to know where we stand as far as funding coming from Wales. They've got that £3 billion. They need to ensure that it is distributed, because I'm concerned in a year of election that they will be keeping money to one side to give away little freebies before the election. Thank you.
Yeah, diolch yn fawr, Gronwy. Right then.
Thank you, Gronwy.
I'll put you through over to Dawn. She will explain the different proposals we have.
So can I just confirm that we've had recommendations 2.1 and 2.2 proposed by Councillor Anne and seconded by Councillor Brian, and then recommendation 1.3 was proposed by Councillor Harry, that officers and cabinet look at the options in 3.28 to develop a recovery plan, including a freeze on reserves unless they've been committed, and that a report comes back on the 2nd of November. Is that right?
If I could just provide some clarity, again, I feel I'm doing this a lot this morning. I initially wanted to make an amendment to Anne's proposal, so mine would be recommendations 1, 2 and 3 plus the report on the 2nd of November.
Okay.
If you want to take it as a separate proposal.
Yeah. Okay, right. So we go with which one, Don? Okay.
So if we, sorry.
Yeah, right. So
if we take Councillor Harry's amendment then to 1.1, 1.2 and 1.3, including a report. So if I ask Sally to read out your names, please.
before Sally goes ahead, can I just, for clarification for Councillor Ken Stevens, Ken, you're not on this committee, so you will not be asked to vote. However, I can tell you, if you want to jump ship, there is a vacancy in the Plaid Cymru group. Okay, yeah, right.
I'll take that on board, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Over to Sally.
Okay, Councillor Phil Capper. Councillor Phil Capper.
In favour.
Okay. Councillor Jeff Corrie.
In favour.
Councillor Brian Cossey.
In favour.
Councillor Pauline Heap-Williams.
In favour.
Councillor Andrew Hinchliffe.
Andrew, unmute yourself.
Still on mute, Councillor Andrew.
Ask him to put his fingers up, thumb up.
Could you just show with thumbs up or? Yeah, okay, fantastic. Councillor Chris Hughes.
In favour.
Councillor Ronnie Hughes.
Against.
Okay. Councillor Wynne Ellis-Jones.
Obliged.
In favour.
Councillor Yvonne Lloyd.
Obliged.
Councillor James Lusted.
Obliged.
Councillor Anne McCaffrey.
2nd of November is too late, so against.
Councillor Austin Roberts.
Obliged.
Councillor Harry Saville.
Or.
Councillor Nigel Smith.
Obliged.
Councillor Joan Vaughan.
Oh.
That's carried then, isn't it?
Okay, that's carried, yeah.
Yeah, okay, right. Can I just remind you that, are we all, and I just want a show of hands with this, are we all in agreement with the exempt item that we do not allow the press and so on? Everybody happy? Show of hands, please, quickly. Yeah, okay, lovely. See you in a few minutes then. You have to log off and then log back on. Okay, diolch yn fawr.